The winds blew heavily as a lone man rode along sand dunes. As far as the man could see, there was only sand, sand, and more sand. It was barren wasteland, where only the bravest or idiotic tread. His goggles glinted in the light, despite the efforts of his wide-brimmed hat to block out the sunlight. The man wore a black long coat, blue shirt, and trousers. Beneath his hat was red hair, which matched his neatly trimmed red beard. Behind his goggles were brilliant green eyes. He sat atop a spotted brown nag. The trader promised that the horse was among his best, but the man wasn't so sure about that after so many miles on the road with the old nag. The old nag proved to be stubborn, but content to try and eat any shrub she could find along the way to their destination. The man sighed as the sun beat down on man and horse alike, as they slowly continued along. A faint shimmer of purple reflected in the skies above, hinting at the dangerous magic that had tainted this place. I never should have trusted anyone in the damn saloon. The man thought as he wondered if there was even anything out there. The waste held treasures that the Kyrians of old had left behind if you were one of the people lucky enough to find them. Most people were unlucky, and if the raiders didn't get you, the harshness of the land would. Still, there was no denying that the information about an intact Kyrian vault seemed to match descriptions of other finds found throughout the year. Despite his skepticism, Jack Ryder was always on the lookout for the next opportunity. He had grown up hearing stories about Zarn City, and was never quite sure what to make of it, having never been there. Zarn was said to be the one beacon of civilization in a swath of fertile land, in an otherwise unforgiving world. The people in the capital could never understand what it was like for people like him. Well, they enjoyed fancy lives, thanks to modern technological wonders. People in the outlands lived a rugged life in an unforgiving desert. The desert covered the western half of the continent in what had once been a lush paradise generations ago. To be fair, the eastern region that encompassed the majority of the existing kingdoms was comfortable enough, but comfort made people complacent with what they had possessed. However, Jack was anything but complacent. Jack grew up in one of the shanty towns on the outer limits of the Kingdom of Zarn. Growing up in such a place meant that everyone had to do their part to make sure the community kept running. Still, he wondered how a bunch of people with hubris could ruin the world so badly. He didn't know anything about what had actually happened beyond stories of the hubris of man and thinking he could control destiny itself. And frankly, he didn't actually care. Whatever the people of the Kyrian Empire had actually done to mess things up had made life difficult for everyone else. Besides, he didn't see how anyone could have ever lived out here in this wasteland. Aside from the occasional shantytown, the farther you traveled to one of the handful of major cities on the continent, the more dangerous the environment became. He sighed impressed that damn nag would stop chomping on a paltry green shrub and keep going. How could it have ended up with such a stubborn horse? I bet that guy knew this horse was stubborn. Asked for a discount on a horse, get the worst one in the world. Jack grumbled to himself before taking a swig of water from his canteen. He had a vague idea of where he was going. There were rumors of a possible dig site somewhere in the vicinity, and he had just needed to keep moving forward. What he did wasn't strictly legal, but it was lucrative. Discovered ruins from the Kyrian Empire Boulevard regularly guarded by local militias. Rather than send guards abroad, the government hired locals to protect the researchers at any given site. Too bad the researchers just wanted to put any relics they found in museums, instead of trying to see if any still worked. It was true that most relics of the past were irreparably broken, but every once in a while, a working piece of magitech was uncovered that reintroduced one of the comforts of that ancient empire back into the world. Jack passed tumbleweeds and cacti in what was an otherwise barren landscape. It was a long ride on the stubborn nag, but he knew that if he he could reach an untapped ruin, that there could be fortune in his future. Oh, it better be worth it though, because damn is the sun killing me. Jack wiped sweat from his eyes as he continued to ride along. For a moment, he thought he heard the sound of galloping. He blinked and glanced around his surroundings. In the distance, he saw what had to be a dozen men in the red outfits of the Red Riders militia. One thing was for sure, they weren't friendly. Friendly folks don't brandish rifles at you. Jack urged the nag to go faster. At first, the nag barely moved any quicker than before. That was until a shot rang out. That got the stubborn horses to move. "Hey, stop!" yelled one of the horsemen. No. Getting captured by the Red Riders and being detained for a month or worse was not on the agenda today. Knowing that he had crossed into a red zone was enough for him to realize he was on the right path. The riders chased Jack across the barren desert dunes. It had been years since the Red Riders had caught wind of him. The last time he had come across them, they had nearly captured him. Being captured by the Red Riders wasn't something he found appealing. If they didn't outright kill you right away, they had a nasty habit of hanging trespassers on wooden posts on the border to the territory as a warning for those who travel into the territory without a writ of passage. Officially, they only hung repeat offenders. But the Red Riders were known to sometimes skip the vein process when they were afraid to get back to their main outpost to turn in for the night. True, he could have applied for a writ of passage, but the confines of paperwork and rules never appealed to him. Making a profit was much more appealing. He glanced back for a moment and saw his foes closing in on him. He needed to take action, or things were about to get dicey. The nag coursed along towards the canyon that Jack saw in the distance. He pulled an orb from his belt and turned it a notch. Just as he entered the mouth of the canyon, Jack tossed the orb and it hit the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the orb flashed white and the mouth of the canyon collapsed behind him, blocking the entrance for the rubble. Jack heard shouts of frustration as he continued onwards through the canyon. There was no turning back down. The canyon grew more narrow and overgrown with foliage as Jack continued along the way. He gave a sigh of relief as he noticed an odd-looking wall. At first glance, the wall looked like the rest of the stony passageway, but a faint shimmer caught his eye. He stopped and dismounted the horse to examine it. At first glance, the wall seemed to be just another wall of solid rock, but he recognized the faint Kyrian grooves that suggested otherwise. There was a depression in the wall, but no apparent key. He tapped at the various rooms and depression, but nothing happened. He frowned, unsure of what to do next. Naturally, the nag began to nip at the weeds growing by the wall. Of course you would be hungry, he said. Jack shook his head as the horse continued to eat. That's when he spotted an odd-shaped room that had been covered by the grass the horse was eating. He picked up the rock and pressed it into the depression. There was a click. The rock wall grumbled and moved to reveal an opening. Jack stepped inside, finding a dark room. At first, nothing happened, but a light flickered, and soon he could see an untouched structure. The walls were made of metal, and the floor was concrete. Flickering lights that had not been turned on in centuries revealed sealed boxes, neatly arranged as if waiting for someone to pick them up but forgotten about them. The room was obviously from the old Kyrian Empire, and by some miracle hadn't been looted in the past 1,000 years. Jack didn't know it then, but the decision to explore this room would change his life forever. All because his discount horse was hungry. He walked further into the room and found himself in a hallway filled with twists and turns. Jack passed doorways that were still shut with no apparent way to open them. As he walked, lights above clicked on, lighting the way forward. His foot bumped a curious device. It was small and rectangular. Curious. Jack picked it up and examined it. After some effort, he opened the receptacle to reveal a broken screen and keyboard. Disappointed that his file was busted, Jack set the relic gently back on the floor. Jack crossed the threshold into a large room full of dilapidated chairs and tables. A glint on the wall caught Jack's attention. Jack brushed his fingers across the dusty touchpad and hesitated for only a moment before he placed his palm on the touchpad to see what would happen. The glint on the wall flickered as the screen came alive with text written in the old language of the Kyrians. Jack frowned as he thought back to his lessons years ago on the old language that was now mostly spoken in the dusty services held by the Church of Lumeria, or to use in writing academic tomes that, while more interesting than searches, are still time-consuming in translating back into common for Abazarnian. Despite his roguish figure, Jack was a learned man, having been expelled from the academy for an incident involving a cow on top of the bell tower. Jack smiled at the memory, especially the part where the headmaster shouted in fury as boos rang out from above. The academy could remove him, but they couldn't remove the knowledge he had gathered during his 3 years there. Jack read the message. Warning. Network error. Local network access active. Extra it down. He tapped away at the buttons to see if anything happened. The screen blinked and it went to a menu. Jack read through the list of options before spotting the option for inventory. He tapped it and smiled. Although some of the words were unfamiliar to him, he gazed at the list with wonder. It was time for Jack to meet his destiny. What he found wouldn't just change his life. His findings would change the people of the planet Kyrie forever. This path would one day lead to a different man's journey across Kyrie to discover forbidden truths. He could have known the significance of what he was about to uncover at the time. All Jack knew was that there was treasure to be found to make himself rich. They clicked on a door icon, the sealed hangar adjacent to the foyer slowly creaked open, revealing sights not seen since the last Kyrian soldiers sealed the doors before heading into the desert of fates unknown. Jack cautiously inched forward towards the new opening with a curiosity that filled his body that he had never truly felt before. Although he had found old relics in the past that had always been broken, only worth salvaging for the raw materials, difficult to manufacture in the present day. What lay before him was different. Before him was a room full of functioning Kyrian technology. It was time to embrace his destiny to change the world for what he thought would be for the better. He would be mistaken, but that is a tale for another day. Thank you.